Good evening. I've been expecting you. Welcome back to the BluePantheon YouTube channel, and a happy Halloween to you all. For this final video in the BluePantheon Spooky Stories series, I shall tell you a short story where the phrase, "Be careful what you wish for," is the very backbone of the entire story. Be forewarned, this story shall be very frightening. Therefore, viewer and listener discretion is very much advised. As always, please make sure to leave a like on this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe down below to make sure this channel stays around for as long as possible. And without further ado, I bring to you the story of the monkey's paw. We begin with our main characters. One Mr. White, his wife Mrs. White, and their son Herbert White. They were having dinner one dark and stormy night, after father and son had their weekly chess game, which Herbert won, of course, when they heard a knock at the door. When Mrs. White opened the door, there, standing on the stoop, was Sergeant Major Morris, an old family friend who served the British Army in India for the past few decades. As he was an old friend, the Whites gladly invited him in and served him dinner. After exchanging pleasantries, Sergeant Major Morris decided to show them something he had brought home from India. He laid a small package wrapped in cloth on the table and slowly, delicately unwrapped it. And as he showed the family what he brought, they jumped back in shock and horror. 5 fingers, wrinkled and shriveled, looking more like twigs on a tree than fingers, attached to an equally shriveled palm, covered on the back with a thick layer of dark fur. "What is that thing?" Mrs. White gasped, clutching her chest. "Ah," Sergeant Major Morris said, "this is a very special item. Made from the mummified paw of a dead monkey. I got it off of an old mystic in India. He told me there was a powerful enchantment on it, one that would grant anyone 3 wishes. However, he also told me that since these wishes would be interfering with the weavings of fate, each wish would come with a hefty price to pay." "What kind of price, Morris?" Mr. White asked. "Exactly the question I asked the mystic, my good sir," the sergeant major replied. "But he didn't provide an answer for me. Perhaps he couldn't, or wouldn't, I don't know which. It doesn't matter, however. I used the paw once, and... Without another word, Sergeant Major Morris picked up the paw and threw it into the fireplace. Mr. White, thinking quickly, and more than a little skeptical of his friend's words, immediately took a poker and retrieved the paw from the flames. It seemed almost as if the flames hadn't even touched it. At this, Sergeant Major Morris stood up and left, turning back for a moment and saying, "If you must use that infernal talisman, Please be careful what you wish for. Once the door closed behind his friend, Mr. White paused, staring at the paw and digesting these words. Well, what do I wish for when I already have everything I ever wanted? Papa, Herbert spoke up jokingly, why don't you wish to be Emperor of all England? Then no one could criticize you for it. He chuckled, though with a stern look from his father, said, Very well. How about £200 so you can make the final mortgage payment on the house? Now, when you calculate for inflation, that amounts to about £25,216.32 in today's money. Or for my American viewers and listeners, about $34,698.89 today. Mr. White pondered his son's words, and, thinking he had a good idea, he picked up the monkey's paw and said, Very well, I wish for £200. As soon as these words were spoken, Mr. White dropped the paw in shock, saying, It moved! The monkey's paw moved! It twisted like a serpent in my hand! Everyone stood, still as statues, but the paw just laid there on the table. After a few moments, with nothing happening, everyone decided it was time for bed. Before they all retired, Herbert, ever the skeptic, stated, Somehow, I doubt that I will ever see that £200. The very next morning, as with every morning, Herbert had woken up early, leaving before his parents were awoken, to work at the local factory. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. White woke up, they decided over breakfast to wait and see if and when the £200 would appear. Nothing happened until around tea time, where they heard a knock at the door. When they answered, they saw a young man whom they didn't recognize, wearing a sharply tailored suit. Good afternoon, sir and madam, the man said. Would this happen to be the White residence? It is, Mr. White said, shaking the man's hand. I am Mr. White, and this is my wife. What can we do for you? Well, sir, madam, I am from Ma and Megan's. I understand your son, Herbert, works for us in one of our factories, does he not? Yes, he does. What is this about? Mrs. White asked. Well, I'm very sorry to inform you, there was a terrible accident. Someone had gotten caught in one of our machines and was horribly mutilated. He did not survive. Mr. and Mrs. White felt their hearts sinking in their chests. You don't mean, Mr. White said. I am afraid so, my dear sir, the man said. We believe the man who was killed in the accident was, in fact, your son, Herbert. I hope that you know I am merely the messenger, the man continued. I wish to let you know that Ma and Megan's deny any liability for the accident. However, they do wish to give you some compensation in honor of your son and his services. Mr. White turned towards him, and he said, How much compensation? £200. The shock and horror was so great that both Whites had a very different reaction. The last thing Mr. White heard was a scream of anguish from his wife before he slipped into a dead faint. Time passed, and the grief the husband and wife felt for their loss was so great they were nearly silent for that time. One night, Mrs. White couldn't sleep, and her sobs of grief woke her husband up from his slumber. Come back to bed, my love, he said lovingly. You might catch your death of cold. Our son is probably colder, she said, and her sobs began anew. Sometime later that night, Mr. White was suddenly awoken yet again by a shriek from his wife. The paw! The paw! What are you on about? He asked. We can use it to bring him back. Give it to me so I can wish him back to life. Have you lost your senses? We only used one wish, so we have two left. We can use one of the other wishes to bring Herbert back. Love, he said, our son's been dead for 10 days now. When I went to identify the body, the only way I could tell it was even Herbert were the clothes he was wearing. The rest was too hard for me to look at. What if we do bring him back, and he still looks as terrible as when he died? Do you think I care? She replied. I don't care what he looks like. I want him back. Mr. White stared at his wife, and she stared back at him, with sheer determination on her face. He knew from that look she wouldn't back down. So, in the end, he went and took the paw off of its resting place on the mantel. He brought it to his wife and looked at her. One last chance to change your mind? Just wish, was the reply. Mr. White sighed, held the paw in his hands, and said, I wish that my son would be brought back to life. The paw twitched and fell to the floor. Mr. White sat in his chair by the fire, and his wife walked over to the window and opened the curtains. Time passed, with nothing happening. The candle that was lit on the mantelpiece had all but burned itself out, and Mr. and Mrs. White, sensing nothing happened, and their wish had not been granted, slowly crept back upstairs and into bed. Mrs. White feeling very disappointed, and Mr. White feeling strangely relieved. They laid in bed, unable to sleep, and the darkness was soon overwhelming. After a few minutes of silence, Mr. White couldn't take the oppressive darkness, and got out of bed to find a candle. As he walked slowly down the steps, he soon heard a light knock on the door. He froze, listening, and he soon heard the knocking again, more insistent this time. Who could that be at this time of night? He said to himself. Then a third time, louder and harder on the door. Soon another sound, a shrill scream was heard, followed by the sound of someone running down the stairs. It's him! Mrs. White shouted as she barreled her way down the stairs. It's Herbert, I know it is! How silly of us! Of course it took him a while to get here. The graveyard's 2 miles away from here. Wait, Mr. White said, grabbing his wife on her way down. There's no way we should let whoever or whatever that is in. You don't know if it even is our son. It is, I tell you, she said hysterically. Let me open the door. I want to see him again. Mother's coming, Herbert, Mother's coming. Soon she broke free from his grasp and moved towards the door. Mr. White quickly ran upstairs, knowing he didn't have a lot of time to waste. On his way up, he heard the sound of, Come back down here at once! I can't reach the latch on the door. I need you to get it for me. With a short sigh of relief, knowing he still had some more time, he moved into the bedroom, dropped down on his hands and knees, and started searching frantically for the only thing he could think of to get out of this situation. He found it, just in time to hear Mrs. White grab a chair and move it to the door, and then the sound of the latch slowly being lifted. With no time left to spare, he took the paw in both hands, and he whispered his final wish. As soon as it started, the knocking stopped. Soon Mr. White could hear the sound of the chair being moved away from the door, and then the door being opened. The next sound, a cry of anguish and distress from Mrs. White, was the sound that gave him the nerve to comfort her. As they stood there on the stoop, looking out over the front gate, the only thing that could be seen in the early morning was a lone street lamp, looking over an empty and silent road. Thank you all so much for watching this Halloween special. If you liked this video and you want more, please consider leaving it a like and subscribing down below so you don't miss any new content. Also, if there are any other ideas you want to see in future videos, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Who knows? It might just happen. Well, that's all the time we have left for today's video. So I will see you all next week with some brand new content. Sweet dreams!